Hi there, it's Mabel again. I'm one of the 4 artists working with Youth Art Connection to drive conversation and to create coverage for the National Accessibility Week's digital conference. I was able to attend a part 2 to the post-secondary education conversation, and I was very surprised at how different the two events were. It really goes to show that the conversations that we have, even if we're having the exact same conversation, is completely dependent on whoever is taking part in that conversation. And sometimes even if people think that they're saying the exact same thing, the way that they're communicating it is the deciding factor in what gets taken away from that conversation. I don't know how much I talked about this in the last video, but this video, a big focus is going to be on language. So a really easy way to think about language right now in relevance to this topic is acknowledging that there are flaws within the systems that we're trying so hard to make better. So somebody saying we're trying to implement something is a lot more likely to gain my trust than somebody saying we are doing something. The foundations of all of our nonprofits, of all of our meetings, our gatherings, our families, are on the backs of minorities. And the fact that educational institutions to begin with are built on racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism. I want to talk about accessibility in language. There are cultures and languages that are imbued into the soul of that person. They are roots that no matter how hard you try to get rid of them, you'll never forget how you talk at home. And I'm not talking about the crappy things you used to say, what you used to call the gay kids on the playground. No, we can unlearn all that. But I'll never forget how I talked to my friends when I was a kid and how they talked to me. It was second nature. I do know that people's language, the way that they present themselves and the way that they communicate with the world around them, is a precious thing that needs to be understood more widely and respected. That's why I have such a hard time with academic language. Educational institutions have a language that is learned, and it, for me, is one of the only places I can think of that has a language that nobody learns naturally. People create buzzwords for a larger topic, and instead of diving into those topics every time, which would slow down progress and make it so that boardroom conversations went nowhere, they can just say a term and have it cover that entire idea without having to worry about it. And these things can be extremely loaded, even if they're words that most people know the definition to. The way that they can be used in academia can be loaded with so much more research and evidence and papers and knowledge that just most people are not privy to. And not just that, but people are using synonyms for words that are commonly understood, that are not commonly understood. I was always considered a geek or a nerd. Whenever I talked, people would make fun of me because I was always too technical with my descriptions of things, and I just kind of spoke in a way that didn't really resonate with anyone else. As I grew up, it became a part of my identity. One of my favorite things to do in high school actually was read through instruction manuals. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because most of the time, I can keep up with people around a board table. I don't really have any difficulty having discussions about general health care. I don't have problems with low-level legal discussions, especially if they relate to human rights. I also don't have a hard time discussing policy change. I don't have a hard time talking about business. And I especially don't have a problem talking about nonprofits. Whenever I find it hard to keep up with something, I know that there's a really big problem because I'm not an academic. I'm not. I study a lot for my own purposes, but most of it is haphazard electrical engineering and synthesis theory. But I think about my friends, and I think about who they grew up into being. They're just honest people, and they work very hard for what they have, and they have open hearts and open minds, the ones that are still in my life. I know that if they tried to listen in on some of the conversations that we've been having this week, that they wouldn't be able to understand a word that was being said. And that's frightening to me. It's frightening to me because these people don't have any cognitive disabilities, and they also don't have any learning disabilities. In fact, they were pretty great in school. They got pretty high grades. So if that's not a useful metric for which type of people will be able to understand our conversations, is there one? In the end, there's only one question that sums up the entirety of this discussion about accessible language and the barriers that academic language often put on, well, the general public, let alone disabled folks, which is, who are we having these conversations for? Who is supposed to be listening, and what is the outcome supposed to be of this? Is it a professional networking opportunity? Is this an academic place to share ideas and grow our base of working knowledge? Perhaps the most important thing is to very concisely describe exactly who events are created for and what we think that our events that we're putting on will offer. Something that we fear a lot is, oh, well, we're putting labels on things, so isn't that making things less inclusive? Most of the time, if an event says it's safe for a certain group of people, it doesn't mean it's not safe for the rest of us. As always, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I can't wait to see you in the next video, and until then, I'll see you later.